Hey guys, freshly rebranded Nurbey here to talk to you about Process. Despite my own personal history with the map, Process is generally well known to be very friendly for medic. This is mostly due to how open the map is, which enables medics to have a very good field of view on the whole thing. This makes it easier to position yourself as medic and to watch out and react easier to incoming bombs. The downside, or upside, depending on who you are, is that you tend to have to be pretty passive as medic on this map as a consequence. Because this map being so open, this makes it relatively easy for medics to get bombed. So, to reassure that you don't get caught out every 2 seconds, medics tend to have to play really far back unless there are no soldiers ready to get on top of you. Outside of a medic perspective, this map is still a very popular plug map because it is relatively easy to understand and it's a pretty good map for most classes in the game because of the open up areas for soldiers, the high ground open areas for scouts to play around on, and the many chokes and slants that give Dome and good angles to mess around with. I won't go into too much detail about the specifics, but if you ever have the chance, a great way to help your survivability as medic is to test out what bombs soldiers and demos can do on this map and see how easy it is for them to land in certain areas. This makes it easier to anticipate bombs on top of you during situations where you will be focused. Now, with the introductions out of the way, let's resume with talking about how to play the mid fights. Alright, as usual, the first thing we'll talk about what to do as a medic is how to play the mid fight. Typically when you come to a choke, the first thing you want to do is try to react to arrowing your Devil Man. A classic mistake that I make, I don't know how often other medics make this mistake, is that I typically shoot my arrow way too early. Devil Man, I don't wait a second. Try to make sure your Devil Man is standing still and safe from harm before you shoot him from the arrow. Most of the time they won't be completely safe from harm, but that's why it's important if you shoot the arrow at them ASAP. But what I mean is, like, the mistake I make is that I'll shoot an arrow at Devil Man like way too soon before he stands still, and I just want to make sure you guys don't make the same mistake. But the first mid that we're going to talk about is going through the left side here, or past the health pack. One thing a lot of teams will do in general is they'll generally play pretty passive on this rock area or the choke. I see a lot of like lower level medics or a lot of like medics and pugs. They'll commit to playing around the rock. And a big thing about process that it's usually beneficial for teams to push across the side ASAP instead of just playing around passive in this tiny little choke area or any area in general. So usually what my team likes to do is that we'll push up this left side here, and I'll try to follow them around ASAP. Like, if I see my team is getting aggressive and no one dies as I'm making my time to go across this health pack here, it usually tells me, okay, the mid's going well, I don't have to worry about that. And I'll try to get past this health pack to around this area ASAP. And when you're around this area, make sure you're always looking up. It's really easy for soldiers to do high bombs off this map, either through coming off of that area there or bombing off this wall here. And it's also very common for you to get spammed at constantly by pipes and stickies. So it's really important for you to make sure that you're paying attention and looking up at all times and just being wary of soldier bombs or stickies. I think it's important for a medic to look up in every single situation, honestly, but it's extremely important on process as it's really easy to lose track of soldiers and stuff on this map, and you don't want to be too dependent on your stats entirely to make sure they're keeping track of what's bombing you and what isn't. And when you're playing aggressive over here, then you're joining, this is where you're going to be hugging around as medic. And make sure you're always tending to your scouts, or you're following your scouts a bit more aggressively as they're trying to walk forward around this area here. That's usually what I like to do, is I just generally follow my scout around 24/7 on this map. And that's pretty much all the comps you really need to have. A scout is pretty much going to stop for anything really just bombing on top of you. So as long as you're being wary of soldiers and you're following your scout, pretty much no matter where you go on mid, generally you should be more on the safer side. But a thing to look out for is generally if I'm walking across from choke, I'm making my making progress to get over here, and would say, for example, one of my teammates die and we didn't make a trade. Like if one of my teammates die but they traded somebody else, same thing as before. I walk across the health pack. But let's say, for example, my teammate dies, no trade was made. Uh, I tend to be a bit more passive. Like, I'll be ready to leave IT if I realize we're losing another player or our health is starting to get really bad. Usually in situations where we know we're at this sad pretty fast to a fight, I'm already ready to boot it and get out of there. I know some teams don't like that, but that's generally how I like to play mech, 'cause that's usually the safest way to play. Because with that mindset, you know when to be more aggro as medic and you know when to get out as medic. And I will be a bit more aggressive still if I know my team is doing a lot of damage despite being the player down. But I don't expect lower level teams or usually even up to middle teams to play off of comms that well. So usually what you want to do is just pay attention to who's up and who's dead. Do they have player ad? Get ready to get out. Do we have player ad? We should get more in. But remember, general rule of thumb is as long as you're taking your scout on this map when you're walking across anywhere, you should be fine. Just be ready to get out through IT here if you're walking through the left side. Don't try to get out IT though. if, for example, your team's all the way over here, and you're just kind of just dancing around here by yourself, or you're just tanking like a soldier on top of the box. If you're in a situation where you're just tanking a single soldier on top of the box, and your whole team's all out in front of sewer, and again, you're just standing here, good chance either you're going to flank through somebody through choke who's going to meet you behind an IT, or you're just going to get stickied out. You don't want to be in a situation too early. Remember, you just want to be ready to get out IT. You don't want to be immediately hiding in IT. The only excuse you should ever have is hiding in IT is if you got stickied out before you had a chance to walk across the health pack. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward mid on the left side. It's going to be the same type of logic on the right side. These mids are pretty straightforward on this map, honestly. But yeah, general rule of thumb again, I'm going to repeat it even more after this. Follow your scout, play around your scout, and make sure you're generally around your team. The moment you're separated from your team, especially on this mid, since a soldier can bomb and land it pretty much anywhere, good chance you're going to die if you're separated from your team. So try not to get separated from your team. Good rule of thumb, any situation is medic, honestly. Now, another mid, right side, same thing with the Delman arrows. Make sure you're staying still. It's a lot easier to arrow a Delman on the right side. And Delman tend to need to be arrowed on the right side because despite the pill ball being here, it's not a medium health pack like there is over there. So they're generally going to need to arrow way more when they roll out here. The only thing to watch out for more is honestly stickies because the enemy Delman will tend to sticky the health pack more. But it's way easier for you to get hit by stickies on this right side here because again, you have to be looking directly up to react to it, but a lot of mechs aren't looking up. They're going to be healing around looking like this, so it's easy for them to eat rollers, to eat stickies, and it's even easy to eat rockets sometimes, because sometimes soldiers will be on top there shooting rockets at you. So it's really, really easy to get spammed in this area here as medic, and that's something you should really watch out for. Especially for rollers. The amount of times I've gotten piped here on accident because I don't make it to shoot over that crate and the rollers can run right on top of you, especially with Iron Bomber being so common nowadays. It's just really easy for you just to eat 8 million damage just waiting outside of sewer here. Sewer being this area here, by the way, in case you didn't know. And generally I like to do here is just another general scout theory. This map is extremely good for scouts, especially for the mid. So what I like to do is that I see a lot of mechs really play over here. I think playing back here is pretty fine, honestly, as long as the Delman's not being too aggressive with his spam. Like, if you play back here and Delman's being aggressive, you're going to get stickied out pretty much guaranteed. You're going to get pressured out. So try not to play back here generally unless you know your team's not getting aggro, or again, you're at a player dispatch situation the moment you get to mid. And the reason why I bring up the player dispatch so much, by the way, is because the fast soldier roll on this map is extremely common, and it's also an extremely common situation where that fast roll is not going to go well for your team, which is why I'm bringing it up constantly, because it's really easy to come in this mid, not even 5 seconds in the mid, you're already going to be down a player. But generally, yeah, playing back here or around this area, it really isn't too bad. Just please keep in mind, if you get bombed by a soldier, if your team, always run towards your team. I see a lot of mechs get bombed by a soldier, and they'll back up into sewer. If a soldier does a small jump off this crate to land in front of you in sewer, you're going to die if you back into sewer. If a soldier does a big bomb and they're going to like the whole skybox, then back up into sewer isn't a guaranteed death sentence. Honestly, it might be better than just running at your team, but always keep that in mind, what type of bombs can get you caught out or not, which is why I mentioned in the intro, test out what bombs can easily get you caught out or not. Because if a soldier does a high bomb, hiding inside of houses like that is a good idea. If a soldier does a little low bomb to land right in front of your face, hiding inside of small areas like that generally is a bad idea. But to talk more about going across on the right side here, again, I always generally tend to follow my scout, but when I go across this right side, it's way easier to be buffing my soldiers. And I love having my soldiers buffed around here when I'm in this area. Having bombing soldiers on this point is extremely valuable. And being able to walk forward and have your scouts aggress off your soldier bombs is extremely useful. And again, always just take your scout, follow your scout on this point. I cannot repeat that enough on this bit. I'm sorry if it's way too repetitive, but I don't care if I sound like a broken record. Always take your scout and make sure you're following them across the point as often as you can, and make sure that's who you generally want to be around, because you're going to be the best at denying people, the best at denying soldiers, and all that fun stuff. And when you're going across this right side here, when you're following your scout finally to go across this right side, be careful of looking at IT yourself. Never ever do this, honestly, when you go across the right side and then go inside of their IT. That almost never ends well. Either you get stickied out, or sometimes there's be someone hiding in IT, or someone runs away, right? And then they're going to rotate to IT. Generally, being in the enemy team's IT, if your team's getting aggressive across the right side, you don't want to be in that situation. What I like to do is I immediately run across the right side, and I try to get around to this area here. Generally, if your team's across this right side and you're all the way here in this area, this doesn't mean you pretty much are winning in mid, but it does mean you're a lot safer and a lot more supportive to your team compared to being passive in IT or playing around the pack. I see a lot of mechs make a mistake of just playing around this health pack here, and you do not want to be in that situation. So generally I like to be around this rock area here, looking at choke, looking up for spam. Try to pay attention. Try to always keep in mind if you know somebody ran away during the mid fight to go into their sewer or to get out of their choke. Because that same person, good chance they're going to come back out of their choke to come fight you. If you're worried about that, that's when I generally like to play around here. But it is pretty easy to get spammed here, so always be mindful of the spam. And just make sure you keep following your scout. Generally, if your scout's playing around this rock area here and looking forward, that usually means there isn't somebody hiding already out from the enemy team. But remember, you should be wary of that. And if there is somebody hiding out or already out in second and you're worried about being bombed, just make sure you're calming and you're looking at the choke. You shouldn't be getting spammed so easily over here on this rock. Just be mindful of the dome stickies. Rockets really shouldn't be a problem here. The only thing that should be a problem here for you is scouts trying to flank you or soldiers trying to bomb you. Usually dome spam is not an issue when you're playing around the enemy team's rock. Another common situation I want to go over really quick before we stop talking about the mid fight is a soldier getting behind you. It's extremely common for a soldier to get behind you on this map, and when that happens, you're going to be stuck for his mech. You want to make sure you're hugging your teammates, and you want to make sure your team's either getting aggro or they're waiting for the guy to fuck up that's behind you. Generally in higher level, teams just tend to get aggro off a player going behind them because they usually, that means the player's down. If we go fast enough, they won't have time to sandwich us. Usually if you choose to stalemate while player's behind you, that gives them time to set up a sandwich, and a sandwich is, they're coming from both in front and behind you at the same time, and you're going to get flooded. And at least you as a mech are guaranteed going to die in that situation. You always want to be wary about somebody going behind you. So, if somebody goes behind you through IT, if somebody ever goes behind you through IT or through sewer, it should never be both. It's only be one or the other. That means choke is never going to be safe. They're always going to be ready to try to counteract if you're playing through choke, which is a benefit because usually when people go behind you, they're going to wait for somebody to leave choke. They're not going to commit on anything immediately. So if you know that's true, usually a soldier should be watching IT real quick, not committing for a person behind you, but just to make sure they aren't staying in IT so they don't come back IT. So soldier stays behind here, your team goes aggressive. Again, just follow your scout as they're going forward. If a player goes behind you, don't try to play by yourself in the choke unless your whole team is playing around that idea. If you play by yourself in the choke and a soldier is behind you, you're going to die in that choke just being by yourself. That soldier's pretty much getting exactly what they want with you just being by yourself, and they get a free bomb on top of you. Always be around your scout, and you should always remind your team, hey, there's a guy behind us. Don't, be insistent on it, but be a little reminder, hey, there's a guy behind us, be careful as your team's going forward, just to help somebody remember they always gotta be looking behind. That's generally pretty much it for the process mid. There is some unique situations where your team may run across a straight point, or there may be a sniper. If you're worried about a sniper, just remember the common sight lines, like the sight lines through IT or the sight lines through choke. And if you can play out those sight lines, it's pretty much the same mid as ever. And when some teams run across the point, when teams do that, remember, just heal your scout when you're generally doing things. And as long as you remember the general heal order of element needs to be buffed, soldiers need to be buffed, tank your pocket scout. That's really all you need to remember if you do the cross the midpoint. I don't do the running across midpoint enough, and I think even if I did do it, it's a pretty straightforward mid for medic. As long as you remember the golden rule, just heal your scouts, you should be fine and dandy as far as midpoints are concerned. But yeah, that's pretty much the midpoint. Next thing we're going to talk about is holding mid in situations where it's even uber, and again, you guys own the midpoint. Alright, so to not go into a situation where you're holding mid in case the situation where even uber, even that, just your classic typical stalemate on process mid. I wouldn't go over the first no every single medic. No matter what level a medic is at, I've always seen medic is always bound to make this mistake, which is healing here in this corner. While this mistake has become more uncommon as time goes on, it's still a pretty common mistake nonetheless where medics will go inside of this corner. This is an extremely bad angle to be at. While it may seem convenient because you're not directly being hit by spam or things like that, once the enemy team has any indicator that you're hiding out in this corner here, you're going to be eating stickies, rollers, and potentially not rockets, mostly stickies and rollers. You're going to get pressured so hard out by the dome, man. And even then, you can still potentially eat rockets there with simple splash damage just from hiding on that corner. You do not want to be there. And it's really easy. If they ran a sniper and you're caught in this corner, you are now stuck on this right side wall here. You're pinned by the sniper. You're guaranteed rollers. I have dropped so many times because I decided to be in this corner as a lower level player. You do not want to be in this corner. Please avoid being in this corner no matter what. If you want to heal people and not be caught out, over on the other side is perfectly fine. This is the same exact healing. It accomplishes the same exact thing, and you don't get caught out, and it's harder for you to get bombed, and the sniper silent will bother you. Little improvement over healing there in general. I always recommend medics to heal around here, or more specifically heal back here. Just be careful in healing back here to not peek on top of here. Sniper is a very popular class to be around this map, and walking top here enables you to be in a sight line. I don't know if crouching actually helps against the sight line or not. I like to crouch a lot when I'm trying to avoid the sniper, but again, if you do walk on the staircase crouching or not, guarantee he can see you. But yeah, I love to heal people around this area here, or this area here. If they have a sniper and your team runs a sack and you want to be positioned for a counter sack, where I like to stay in the situation they have a sniper is I like to stay really passive either over in front of sewer here. This isn't the best area to be in, simply because what happens is a soldier can still run right on top of you and it's really easy for him to get a follow-up, but it's just really hard because the soldier just has to know you're there ahead of time for him to get an even decent bomb off. Another thing I like to do a lot is if I could, yeah, that jump's really easy. They jump on top of here to get on top of this house here. Don't fall off like I did. Getting on top of this little roof area is also really good against soldier bombs because, like, oh, I'm being bombed. I can jump down here. I can jump down here. Super easy. You avoid sight lines. You avoid being bombed by soldiers. And falling off to the left side, make sure you're not going to get caught out by a random ass sight line. Pretty popular thing ever since, I think it was 2 iSeries ago. I forgot which one. There's an iSeries where a sniper from 7 headshot Cookie Jake from peeking here, from him hiding inside sewer. That's also become a pretty popular thing nowadays. Be careful as medic going near the shutter here. Try to always be around this area here to avoid that. The enemy team does open a shutter, so just generally try to avoid a shutter nowadays. Again, being over here is good enough. Being up here peeking aggressively is good enough. Again, if you know they're going to counter sack, you want to either be all the way back here or going on top of this roof area here. I really like doing that. I think this is a good way to handle being counter-sacked. If they do not have a sniper, I just straight up play back over here on top of the staircase in front of IT. As long as we have somebody watching IT, like typically a roamer watches IT, but also typically your roamer's gonna be the one that's dead when your team does the sack. So you should have a scout watching IT instead. If your scout says people are coming IT, then that means I like to rotate back down to the ground here. Being on the point is actually not super good. Is a soldier does usually have to waste 2 rockets trying to bomb to get you on top of the point. So if I know the soldier's bombing on top of the point, I usually just back up. If you have decent enough mechanics to just surf or stuff like that, this is a really good area to surf around on. Just make sure to be careful of your head. But if you're not confident in your mechanics as a medic, probably backing up all the way over here isn't too bad of an idea, honestly, because it's just really hard for a soldier to land on top of there. Or again, if your mechanics are super well, playing on top of this roof area, like I suggested, even if they don't have a sniper, is a really good area to play on. If you want to play it super safe, playing top of this roof as if you're anticipating a counter sack is a perfectly fine idea. Now, this is typically how we hold in situations where we have Uber. It's even Uber. I would say for someone using like your mechanics weren't good enough, but you decide to stay there anyway. You get forced, and now the enemy team has Uber out because you didn't get the force out. Well, what I like to do now is that we're going to back all the way up here. Typically, again, as I mentioned in introductions, that you're going to be playing really far back. Excuse my squeaky chair. You're going to be playing really far back on this map, no matter what. It's really, really hard to play aggressive mech at all on this map. And I want to talk about the most basic position to be in, which is choke. Demo Man can cover almost the entire point in like 2 seconds. Like, it's extremely easy for him to bomb from anywhere and get right on top of you in a matter of no time. Like, let's say, for example, if the Demo Man did a jump through choke, and you were right here, you are going to die. It's super easy for Demo Man to catch on mech on this map if he gets Ubered. Typically, I like to play behind the rock here. I consider around this point of the rock, if I'm past that little point there, I consider that, okay, if I'm past there and they bomb in on me, I am going to die. So I usually avoid being back there. I tank up my soldiers. I'll let them come to me for buffs. Let your team come to you for buffs, not the other way around. You don't want to get caught by a humongous Uber after them. Especially on a map that really favors momentum like this one. You don't want to get caught out. You're going to heal your team, but let them come to you for buffs. And when you see them coming in, you just walk out, choke, and it's as straightforward as it gets. Stay behind this rock, but wait your team come to you for buffs, and when they bomb, just back up. And if you know they aren't bombing, I like to shoot a lot of arrows. I mean, like, arrows being expanded to me team here is actually pretty useful, because remember, your arrows this far away are going to do 75 damage. So this shit is really nice. It's really useful for your team to have, or it's really useful for you guys in general. But if they do pop in, this should give you enough time to see, like, okay, they aren't popping. I'm going to shoot arrows. Just don't overcommit to shoot the arrows. Or, oh, they popped in. I can react enough to back out of here. As easy as it gets, just keep that in mind. If they pop in, back up. Don't walk past this point on the rock. If they don't pop in, don't be afraid of shooting an arrow or two and then back up. Just remember, don't commit to the arrow shooting. Now, sometimes teams be playing a bit more aggressive. They want to spam for the force, which is what they should do. I've been doing this a lot more lately, but this isn't the most. I'm not the most comfortable doing this yet, as I still do get caught out by it sometimes. But I think a thing that medics should start adapting to is trying to leave IT when they have Uber. You can aggressively heal your soldiers way more, so they can get buffed more consistently. And soldiers bombing for a forceless map is really easy because every single exit, sewer, IT, and choke, it's really easy for a mech to get bombed and forced on either of those, all three of these chokes. So typically having really buff soldiers is extremely useful, and you should have a scout ready to get out with you no matter what. So it's really easy for you to buff your team or help tank them up and help just heal them in general as they're trying to spam team for a force. And when when your team comes that they popped, you just easily run out of IT and rotate up to bats here and rotate back to choke to either re-uber on them to commit to a leapfrog situation or to go to holding second or whatever you guys will do in a situation after that. But yeah, I think playing IT is an underrated thing right now. I think Momex should learn to go around doing that. The only thing to be aware of is that unless they come through sewer or IT, if they come through choke, you're not going to be able to see them Uber. And you have to really pay attention to your team's comms for a situation like that. So always be wary of that. Always keep that in mind. And obviously, you always want to pay attention to your team's comms. Being aware of what's going on with your as medic, especially with what your team is saying, and just common game sense. That will carry you a long way as medic, and this will help you survive a lot more situations. So always pay attention to that. These are typically the two ways that I will get out in a situation where we're at this ad. I do know some teams will either leave sewer. The only time you should leave sewer is if you get forced around the health pack area, and sewer is just the easiest way for you to leave. You only want to go sewer if it is the closest exit to you. Do not leave sewer simply because it's so easy for you to get caught out through choke. If you go sewer, if anything's going through IT, if anything's going through choke, you're going to get caught out. So only go through sewer if it is the closest exit to you, and you just want to avoid being bombed on. As we mentioned earlier in the mid, teams do a general really big high bomb. Leaving through sewer is a pretty good idea. Not through, but leaving through these tiny little house chokes like that, then it's a good idea. But most, if they do a low bomb, obviously it's a lot easier to get caught out because they'll be right more in front of your face way faster. So just keep that in mind when you're leaving through sewer. Is okay, they gotta do a really high bomb up because they don't know if I'm in choke or not. Always just keep that tidbit in mind when you're ready to leave, or when you're leaving sewer. Sorry, I'm doing this off script, so my sentences are coming out the best. Next thing we'll talk about is typically pushing. Now, I just think there's three ways to push on this map. Let's say, for example, you guys are pushing with humongous Uberad. Usually, not humongous, but usually if my team wants to get on the enemy team as fast as they possibly can, we're going to go through IT. It's because going through IT, if you pop in a soldier or scout, you're pretty much going to be right in front of their face if they're caught out at all. And we only do this typically if we have, like, okay, we know we have 30 or 40 ads, so let's pop it through IT and get around their face and hopefully we'll catch them out. So what we do, usually you want, going through upper IT to bats here is honestly the best way to go. But it actually sucks to go there if the enemy team knows you're there. So typically the way it goes is we're coming in, oh, someone spot us, we're going to go through IT. It's not the medic's decision to decide if you're going upper IT or lower IT or not. I'm just mentioning this because it's a useful thing to keep in mind for how your team is going to carry this momentum of the tiny Uber ad. Like, I know if when my teammates got seen going in through this IT area here, they are going to rotate to go to lower instead of coming to upper, but if they don't get seen, they're going to go through upper bats here. I keep that in mind, so it helps me follow them way faster. Because if I'm stuck standing here thinking, where are they going? I'm just waiting for them to say where they're going. That makes it slower. It makes me hesitant. You never want to be hesitant to make. You want to be like, okay, we're doing this, that. You want to have fast decisions making as medic, as that will help you also survive way more, and it's more useful for your team to help make momentum. Medic carries a lot of momentum by either surviving or making fast decisions. So please keep that in mind. Mech really is a super important class, despite being the easiest class to play, probably in like the highest levels. It's still a super important class nonetheless. So you always gotta keep that in mind. So remember, if you get seen, most likely go through lower IT. If you do not get seen, you'd be going upper IT. Whoever you're healing should be calming where they're going anyway. So always keep that in mind. It's not like you're completely hopeless if you don't like if you don't know if you got seen or not, just always keep in mind what your teammates are saying and be aware if you get called out or not. You're also most likely always going to have to pop through when you come in through one of these points. You very rarely never not have to, and it's very hard to have the reactions necessary to not have to pop through one of these tiny choke points, which is upper bats or lower IT. Because when you go through one of these areas, it's so easy to get spammed by a soldier standing anywhere. It's so easy to get hit by pipes, rollers, or there's sticky traps out the wazoo over one of these areas. A lot of them will sticky trap the hell out of bats or lower IT if they know you have tiny Uber ad, or if you have Uber ad in general. So make sure your pocket scouts just watching out for traps in general when they're coming through lower IT or upper IT. Pay attention to what they say. Most of the time they're going to say just pop, or at least they should, but sometimes they won't. So make sure you're always listening to what your pocket's saying, like don't pop, oh there's nothing here, or whatever they say that implies there's no stickies or anything there. Always keep that in mind. Remember, going through IT though is generally when you push, when you have humongous ad. Going through choke, I like to go through choke when I know we have player ad and Uber ad. Like if I know if we have humongous Uber ad, like let's say let's pretty much full Uber to like 60% ad to full Uber ad, whatever, a big one. And we know they're down a couple players. Then going through choke is really easy. Going through choke is generally really scary when we have older players because you immediately brush down to not high ground here, like you're in the lower level here. They have high ground. They may be far back, but the Delman is shooting pipes. The pipes are just all going to automatically roll right down to you in the slow ground. Soldiers, they can spam you from anywhere, no matter where they're standing on second. And scouts are always going to be chip-shying you. Your only form of defense is trying to play behind underneath here against this thing and just watch out for rollers and rockets. You do have enough time generally to react to them, so it's not like you're guaranteed to eat spam here. It's really easy for you to eat spam here. So like if they are down a few players, obviously you're eating a lot less spam. You don't have to worry about a big bomb coming to land on top of you and choke. Usually you still want to pay attention for it no matter what. And make sure, general rule of thumb, you always want to be looking up. Watch for stickies, watch for soldier bombs, watch for rockets, just watch for spam. And generally, if you do push this Uber ad, it should just be straightforward just to walk forward. But coming through choke is pretty easy. Again, remember the rule of thumb, follow your scout. I hate sounding like a broken record, but it's a really important rule to follow, is, to follow your scout. He'll be creating all the momentum that you need to go forward past on the second point. So healing your scout, typically you go straight through underneath here. And wherever you do with that Uber from now on, that's up to your scout's decision, up to you. I can't exactly navigate you through all the minor details of a situation like that. But that's a general rule of thumb you want to follow. Follow your scout, look up, pay attention for bombers. Now, if we have humongous Uber ad, but we don't have player ad, like let's say they have 6 players. I have 6 players. I have 80 ad. They got forced or something, whatever. So we're going to rotate sewer. You want to go through sewer because it's a lot easier for their spam not to do that much damage to you if they are spamming you. It's a lot easier to play around soldier bombs inside sewer. You do have a nice convenient health pack here in case you do take a lot of damage. You just go yoink a health pack. That's really useful. And it's just so much easier to anticipate anything coming on top of you. We are walking outside of sewer here. It gives a lot more time to react. It helps your team just slowly walk forward and slowly bully them out. Just remember, you should be tanking your Delman, honestly, in these situations, so your Delman can slowly spam them out. Make sure your soldiers are buffed, because your soldiers can also get a great bomb on top of them, because they want to retreat. The enemy team doesn't want to commit every single player they have on top of you. They may commit like 1, 2, or very rarely 3 players on top of you, so that's why you want to anticipate bombs. But generally, they want to play to get out. They're just trying to spam you, which is important to buff your soldiers for, so your soldiers get bombed the people cut out from trying to commit to spamming you. So buff your soldiers, watch out for spams you're locking forward. Always be careful of sticky traps like in these random corners. I have dropped a million times to stickies being here, or just randomly on the ground, honestly. Tank your demo man until you know. Tank your demo man until you know your team's ready to go forward or they're out. Then you can go back to tanking your scout. But your demo is really important just for bullying them out in situations like these. Now, I believe that covers getting out of mid, holding mid, and how to push out of mid. So the next thing we're going to talk about is all the same situations, but for the second point. Alright, next thing we're about to go over is the second point for CP process. This is typically probably the most confusing points for medics on this map, as there's actually a lot of areas of medic can stay on this map. The best ones and the worst ones is completely dependent on what type of situation you are in. So let's say, for example, completely even Uber stalemate, no off classes, 6v6, even Uber. I generally like to play around here. You do gotta be a little bit careful though, because if you stay around here for too long, you do get hit by stickies. A lot of Dome is charging them and he's shooting them through choke. You tend to get hit by the stickies by them landing on here occasionally. But I do see a lot of teams in mix play a bit aggressive over here. I highly do not recommend that for the simple case, if a soldier comes flying in through choke, it's extremely easy for that soldier to land right on top of you. So I like to usually play around this area here, or I'll be playing up over here on this railing and trying to tank from over here. If I'm trying to heal my team, trying to peek choke a bit more aggressively, as it's really awkward for a soldier to come bombing on me through choke. It is pretty easy for a soldier to bomb me on top of me and sewer here, but if I see them coming in sewer and trying to bully in through sewer, it's really easy for me to rotate on top of the point here to avoid them from just getting on top of me as the medic. Again, please do not try to put yourself down here to heal your team more aggressively, as you're going to eat rollers left and right, stickies left and right, rockets left and right. Really easy for you to get bombed on and forced here. So generally try to be a bit more passive on the second point here. Again, remember how easy it is for soldiers to get away with bombs on this map, so always keep that in mind where you're standing on the map here. A big thing I see a lot of medics do, they don't usually do it nowadays, but is stay inside his bats area here. I don't think being inside of bats is a bad idea at all, as the only thing that can really mess you up is a soldier bomb. But for a soldier bomb to be useful, your team kind of has to really mess up here, because you should be having a scout outside of here still, and your dome should be outside here. And while it does open up for your dome lane to be bombed, which is why I don't recommend for mix playing side of here, as this makes it easier for your other classes to get bombed. It is pretty safe for it to be inside of here. So if, say, for some reason why you think that your team is coming for a sack and you're really worried about your medic, I guess you could hide your medic in here, but I really don't recommend it. Because as it is, for a medic just standing over here or on top of this point, it's really easy for a medic just to simply jump off the point or to walk down here or anywhere really to avoid getting bombed on. When you're playing top of the point and you know the soldier's coming from IT, I like to back up down to here. Try not to go against the wall, as when you're against the wall it's much easier to get bombed. But yeah, I like to fall down around this area to avoid soldier bombing from IT. And falling down to this area is also a good place to avoid a soldier coming in through choke and through sewer. This is a general safe area for mix to land on. Only when you're being bombed. I don't like playing here 24/7 just because it makes my healing a bit lackluster, as I can't heal my team while they're trying to spin the enemy team at all. That's why I generally like to play around on top of this point here. If you know they have a sniper, you're mostly going to get pinned to being back here. A situation you really want to avoid is getting pinned underneath this rock here as a medic. Because once you're pinned here against a sniper underneath this rock, and the sniper peeks too aggressively over here, you're going to drop to him no matter what. And your only means of escape is to back up through here, where if the sniper's peeking aggressively by like an inch or two, you're going to get caught out just trying to rotate IT to avoid a silent line. And I see a lot of medics always get stuck underneath this rock here. You always want to avoid that situation as much as you can. And the best way to avoid it is being on top of this point and standing here. The downside is if they have a sniper and they want to sack on top of you, it's really easy for them to sack on you. But as long as your team is putting pressure on Al-Qaeda, which is this exit of sewer over here, you should be able to easily back up and fall behind a point as normal. If you know the sniper's not being pressured on Al-Qaeda, really you're just really stuck praying for your team to actually take care of them from bombing you. And that's the best you can really do in that situation, honestly. That's all you can really watch out for. Just always be wary of that if you can. The sniper's Al-Qaeda, you are pretty screwed as a mech. It's really important to have a soldier to be pressuring Al-Qaeda, or make sure a sniper just doesn't get into that area for free. It's not up to you as a mech that doesn't happen. It's usually up to your team's Delman or a soldier to decide if a sniper's not going to be able to get through Al-Qaeda. But yeah, this is typically how I hold on second even Uber situation, is generally on top of the point. If I get bombed from anywhere, I'll back up looking at the bomber through here. Man, one thing you should be wary of if you're being bombed, always be careful of scout running in through lower IT. You always should watch out for that, because it's a pretty popular thing for people to do a two-man sack. And you just want to watch out for something coming for you through lower IT there. But yeah, that should go over just a pretty basic hold. So next thing we're going to talk about is your team managed to force them into counter sack. So let's say your team is pushing with Uberad now. We're going to talk about what's like pushing your team. It's like like you have Uberad, you're just trying to walk. It's like kind of like the same thing with the verse just backwards now, where okay, it's even Uber, but now we're going to walk in through choke, and it's even player ad. I know, what is it? I know when you're pushing to mid and you have player ad, you want to go through sewer. You don't want to do that here, just because if you go to sewer, as you can obviously tell, it's a tiny little exit. You're going to get stuff super hard. So generally, you want some of your teammates to come in through different areas. Like some will come through choke, others will come through either IT or sewer. Make sure your team always watches out for sewer. I've been having a pretty big issue lately where nobody's checking sewer at all. So make sure you have somebody going inside sewer. So like when you're going through choke, you're not getting flanked behind for free. It's always important to make sure somebody at least walks inside of sewer just to check there's nobody in there. Somebody just going in there for 2 seconds to see if somebody's in there can save your team a whole round. I can't pressure enough how important it is for somebody to go inside of sewer just to make sure that's cleared. But yeah, usually it's even player and you have a giant Uber ad, you generally want to come in through choke. Remember, slowly wide your way through, check for stickies and any of these odd spots. Usually rock is sticky pretty common, or here is sticky pretty common. I dropped to a trap here like a million times. Generally as a medic, you want to avoid hooking against a wall like this. I see a lot of medics do that. I really don't recommend doing that because you're going to eat splash rockets hitting you against the wall. And again, if a sticky trap's there and your team doesn't check that, free deck for the down man. I like to play in the middle here to avoid splash hitting me from against the wall. And the only thing you have to worry about spam-wise is pipes or arrows from any medic. Because again, it's really popular for medics, or very common for medics to shoot you with arrows past the choke point or as you're trying to get out of the choke point, so you want to watch out for that, and pipes. And it's really easy for you to get bombed here. If you could, usually the best way to avoid a bomb is to walk backwards through choke, but if your team is already past the rock, for example, you have to run towards your team to avoid the bomb, because this is not a tight root area, so even if a soldier comes from high above you, he can land right in front of you and just easily jump again to keep chasing you if you're trying to run away through choke, and it makes it really hard for your team to defend you if you're running away. So usually if your team's past this rock, run towards them, make sure you're following them. Don't try to separate yourself too far from the herd, or it's going to be really easy for the soldier to bomb top of you. The same type of logic of pushing through IT is the same thing through sewer. When I come through IT, that's usually with the pure intention of, okay, we're going to have to pop with our Uber through IT, because either you're pushing with a tiny Uber right here, or you think you can get them caught out immediately. Because when you go through IT, that enemy team can't see your rotation because, okay, you're already a medic, you're playing top of the point, and they have Uber disad. They're not going to be rushing, peeking through the choke to see where you're going. So like, usually most teams can tell if you're going through IT if they don't see you in choke long enough, or they'll have somebody spotting in IT anyway like this. Even then, usually pushing through IT and popping IT is really good, because you can get right to their choke point with a demo man Uber bomb in not even a second. So like, if they're caught out by even an inch, usually half their team is going to pay for it if they're just caught at all there. But yeah, usually you come through IT. Most of the time, you're guaranteed to pop through there. Don't be afraid just to pop immediately through the gate as medic. Just please be wary if your team calls for stickies or not, or if they're not spamming you at all. If you come to this IT, you see they're not spamming you, or they're already out, most of the time you have to pop. Just pay attention to what your pocket's saying or your scout's saying, oh, there's no stickies, no one's spamming us. That usually means, okay, you don't have to pop. So always keep that when you're coming through IT. But yeah, general rule of thumb is you come through choke, you're trying not to pop it, milk it through choke, pay attention for bombs. You're coming through IT, most of the time, you are going to have to pop it, and it's okay if you have to pop it. Just be wary of what your pockets say about if there's anything coming through there. And if you do pop through IT, be sure you're healing your scout after you flash your initial people in. Usually you're going to pop in on a demo man or a soldier, and when you do, heal your scout for the rest of the Uber just to make sure you can catch up. Because if you pop in on a soldier and they land top of their choke and you're not healing a scout, you're probably not going to get there in time to save them from another flash. Usually they're going to be dead before you get there, so it's really important to make sure you're Ubering scouts so you have the speed necessary to meet up with them. And we are going through sewer. I'm not going to bother giving you a whole run thing. Typically it's the same thing. Sewer is generally, it's easier to walk out of without popping Uber, so it's more of like a 50-50 to pop or not compared to IT, but generally it's the same rule of thumb going through sewer as it is going through IT. We go to the stalemate, went through the pushes. Now let's talk about the retreat. Generally, when you're retreating here as medic, you're gonna be retreating to 1. So because, as I said, when you avoid a bomb, you're always gonna come down through here. And what's the closest exit to you? 1, which is this door here, labeled 1. So, if you have Uber disad, I like to play back here around here. You don't want, if you're at Uber disad, I saw MX playing aggressive on top of the staircase here or anything like that. While that may work in lower level because the enemy team doesn't know how to bomb super well, most of the time you're going to get caught with mech no matter what. If they come through IT, you're going to get caught out by a scout just simply running at you. If they bomb in through choke or sewer, they're going to catch you off a soldier or a dome bomb. It's not even that hard of a bomb for them to do. So generally I like to play back here. But if I want to help, if you want to help your team be more aggressive and still be able to get out, playing up around here is not a bad idea. You can still heal your soldiers that are on the point trying to spam them. You heal a soldier top there trying to spam them. You can give your flank scout a buff over here, and your Delman should be ready to get out with you, as Delman can't get out this point as easy as soldiers and scouts can. But yeah, usually I have to play around here ideally because it lets me help buff my team way more. But if you usually most of the time, if you get forced one, or you're just trying to run away in the first place, getting out through one is pretty good. I don't know, it's a pretty good way to get out. But yeah, roll out to buff your team to help them keep their aggro if you have time to set it up. One, if you're just trying to get out immediately. There are situations where medics have to get out through second. And one thing I want to talk about is I see a lot of medics make the mistake of, okay, I have to get out through second, so they start walking up this whole thing. Don't ever do that. It may seem like common sense now, but I understand perfectly where in the moment or under the pressure, you feel for some reason why medics will try to run straight to rollout. Always go through lower lobby and just run away. That's it. Just go through lower lobby and leave 4 here. Just get out of there ASAP. Don't waste your time. Lower lobby and get out of there and rotate the last if you get out of there ASAP. But that's typically the hold for a second. Again, near rollout to give your team a bit more aggressive buffs. One, if you have to get out immediately, and if you ever get caught on the low ground here, always try to get out through a lower lobby. Ideally, that's the best way to get out. You're not going to get out through any other exit if that's where you're stuck at. Just always keep that in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much the second point in a nutshell. Next thing we'll be talking about is holding and pushing out of last. Alrighty, now that we're on last, I'm going to go over 3 typical situations. We'll go over when you're at uber sad and they're pushing to your last, when you have even uber situation where to hold during typical stalemates, and how to push out, where to push out when you have uber ad. What you to do when you're at uber sad is honestly really simple. It should take more than 2 seconds explaining. If you have old players up and you're able to stay up real quick to hold last, typically you'll be playing up in this nest as medic. And what you want to do here is that you're going to be tanking your soldier and your scout, or sometimes you might be a heavy underneath. You're not going to commit to tanking them so hard, unless any team's on the opposite side. The reason why it's so nice and convenient to play up here is because it helps you avoid bombs when they all come trashing in. So for example, if you're healing on the left side and you see them Uber into the left side, you're going to rotate your heals over to the right side like this to avoid them coming from the left side. And same logic, coming from the right side, you're going to rotate over to the left side. Now, that's pretty much all there is really to that. The only thing is be careful is you want to take your teams. A mistake that I make pretty commonly when I'm holding up here is like I'll be all the way over here healing someone on the right side, then we'll come into the right side. If I do that, it's typically fine if you have a scout, but if you don't have a scout and they pop up with the right side, high chance you're just going to get caught out. Your best chance of salvation if you get caught in this situation is to just fall down, hopefully make it to spawn. Good chance you won't, but it's really the only thing you can do in that situation. But yeah, you're going to stand up here, heal on this side wherever most of your team is, buff them up, and wherever they pop uber, you're going to rotate to the opposite side and heal people from there. And when you rotate, don't be afraid to fall down the spawn at that rate and just heal from there. But if your team that's on the opposite side, like if they pop on the right side and you're rotating to the left side, if your team is still up top on the right side there and they seem perfectly fine, don't go down to this lower left spawn or the lower right spawn, whatever side you end up on. You can still stay up top as long as your team members are up top on the opposite side. You don't have to worry about rotating straight down the spawn. But that's pretty much all you really have to do is make an uber dispatch situation. Just remember, down the spawn, if your team rotate to the opposite side of where they push, fall down the spawn if your team is losing up top. And if your team still is up top, try to stay up top. Don't try to skip that up. Make sure you're healing the people up top. It's very important that they get their health. Most of your soldiers and possible off classes. Next one, we'll talk about what to do in a stalemate. In a stalemate, it's pretty classic for mix to be staying up here on this ramp. Mostly because it's really hard to get bombed here, especially if your Devilman and Soldier are stuffing out the 1 and 2 area. If you do get bombed, you can simply back up. You usually have a scout around here, or you can easily just rotate to spawn. Usually, since your guns are in play, I do see a lot of mix playing in spawn here. Either spawn here on the right side or either spawn here on the left side. I just realized I'm on the right team, so I can't just walk this out of spawn. But you know, the logic applies all the same. Usually when they do that, I don't like playing near the spawns. I can't say super well. If you're playing spawn, ideally on the left side, because if they have a sniper, if a sniper just peeks out real quick or peeks through one and you're on the right spawn, good chance you just get straight up body shot. But yeah, typically most mechs will be up here during stalemates. Most teams nowadays have been playing more aggressive, peeking side of process lobby. And I'll see a lot of mechs rotating down here to heal them, which isn't bad, honestly. The only thing to watch out for when that happens is honestly mostly rollout and one. And usually you have a soldier watching that, or a Delman has stickies planted there, so it's not that big of an issue. If a medic is down here, typically just be healing your soldier that's constantly spamming from over here, which isn't bad. But something, I think I'm the only one that does this, but something I found out recently is standing over here as medic on this left side. A sniper's sightline can't see you from anywhere, not through 5, 4, 3, or 1, but they can see you through rollout, also known as 2. But usually, if a soldier's just watching there, they don't have to worry about 1 so much, because usually they can easily just turn around or look out for 1 second and they commit most of the time watching raw instead. And this lets you buff up your team as much as you can. You're still around the sentry gun. It's really hard to get sacked here. I think playing in this corner here is really, really good for a medic. And I hope more medics are learning to play around here because, again, hard to get sacked down, especially up off classes. There's only 1 sniper sign that can see you, and that's through rollout. And it's really easy for soldiers to pressure rollout. And if something does come through route to come pressure you, I just usually fall down here to avoid that sniper, and boom, you're avoiding every single sight line if you're worried about sniper actually getting room to roll out. This is how I like to play process class in even situation, and I think most medics out there, especially watching this video, can move to play in this area more often. But that's literally all there is to it in a normal stalemate situation. I know some mechs play in spawn, but I can't explain that as I never really played towards spawn at this point. But playing up there is also a pretty classic spot for me to play on, as it's hard to get sacked on. But ideally, I would say having your classes set up, or people just around you in general, as long as you stand here and someone's pressuring row out, this is the most ideal place to stay in, as you're enabled to buff your team, survive sacks, hard to get sniped on, and again, you can always hold down here if you're worried, and just crouch. Next thing to talk about last is pushing out of last. The last thing to talk about here. Pushing out of last is honestly not the easiest, just because no matter where you push, like, if you want to push a high ground, you're coming through the tiniest choke point in the whole map. If you want to push in through lobby here, if you push through up, again, really tiny choke point, really easy to get spammed. If you push in through lower here, you're pushing with immediate height to sag. And if you're coming in through one here, again, another tiny choke point, really easy to get spammed. There's nothing that really calls for it. Usually, most of the time when you're coming in with Uber, you're doing it with the intentions of, okay, what's the easiest way to get them caught out? If I go through lower lobby, it would be the easiest to get them caught out from there. If I go through upper lobby, it would be easiest to get them caught out through there. Where are they standing? Are they already out in choke? Can I just go through one and not get spammed? Usually when you're pushing out with Uber ad or player ad, you want to know for sure where they're standing. And when you do that, that'll make it really easier for you to decide which you're going through. I'm going through one if I know they're all the way back in choke, because it's really, really hard for them to spam me here, and it's really hard to get sacked on here. If I know they're being a bit more aggressive with their spam, I like to go through lower lobby as well, I'm going to get spammed no matter what. My team can get super aggressive really early if I have to pop in through lower lobby there and get right on top of them. Raw is really nice if you just want to walk through somewhere really fast and have high ad really free and not get spammed on. Like, if I know they have player decide and we have Uber ad, they're not be playing aggressive, pretty far back spamming. Going through Raw is perfectly fine. You just gotta watch for stickies and maybe a soldier bomb that might land on top of you. So you just gotta bait a little bit as medic and watch out for that. Upper IT works to sneak. This is the sneakiest place to go, because if they're being a bit passive, they're not going to see the upper IT until usually you have a player around here. When they're like that, it's usually too late. You can pretty much walk wherever you want. You can either walk straight to here and not worry about being spammed or something like that. Upper IT, on upper lobby here, I'm sorry, is usually honestly the best place to go if you have Uber and player ads, just because you avoid so many things. The only thing to watch out for is a sniper, and if they do have a sniper, as medic, it's really hard to avoid a sight line, because the sniper gets a really good sight line sewer. But if he's being pressured at all, the moment he's pressured, walk over here as medic and hug the right wall, and then you're pretty much safe from the sight line, and your team should already be far forward enough to put pressure on the sniper to help you avoid that. Again, quick repeat of what to do in that situation is wait for the sniper to take his shot or to say he's pressured, rotate up to here, hug the right wall, and then it's really hard for you to get spammed here, and the sniper does not have a sight line onto you until you make it to over here. Just pay attention to when you first see that shutter, because that's when the sniper is going to have a sight line on you. And that's the only thing to be careful of. To give you a quick rundown, if they're far back and they have player decide, going through one is fine. If they're just far back, going through raw may be fine as long as you just watch for soldier sacks. Upper lobby, if they have if they have a sniper and you can someone have pressure them. Upper lobby, if you know they're far back and they have a chance to see you, or lower lobby if you know for sure you're gonna get popped. You don't have to pop out. That's the quickest way to make sure you can call out. If you have to pop out immediately, going through route isn't the worst idea either, because your team can also just get straight on them, and going through route's a really good place for soldiers to bomb through. So raw, if you have Uber but you want to just pop on them immediately, is also not a bad idea. Please keep that in mind. Lower lobby just tends to be the place to be if you have Uber and you want to see if you have a chance of milking it. Usually lower lobby is the place you want to go to milk the Uber. It's just generally really hard. If they're aggressive spamming at all, it's really hard not to have to pop the Uber there. But again, if you know they're far back at all, even if they have 6 players up, going through lower lobby might be your best bet to avoid having to pop Uber going in through there. Okay, I think I went through everything there. Holding second, pushing everything with last there. I think we are good to go. That should about cover everything that you should need to know as medic for this map. This is the pure basics for medic. There may be unique situations that may occur for you, so if you ever have any questions about any of that, don't be afraid to leave any comments below. I may be a bit slow to respond, but I'm always trying my best. Anyway, this map is pretty good for medic and easy due to how passive you have to play by default. A key detail to always remember is to look up, pay attention for where soldiers may be at all times. Be sure to experiment and see where soldiers can land and get away with what. I hope this map review is helpful for you, and I hope you all have a great day.